Hey, everybody. I am super excited to be talking to another congressional candidate. So you're the second candidate we've talked to so far this year. And it always makes me super excited. David Serpa, coming from California, you guys. Did you know that there were actually conservatives in California?
There's a few of us.
There's more than one of you.
Yep, more than one.
There's
Two.
you and there was me and Benjamin when we lived there. Chris, I'm assuming you're campaign manager.
Yep.
And then that's it though, right?
All the rest of them are leaving California. We're all talking about how, immigrants need to stop giving up on their own country while we're packing up U-Hauls to
And
leave
leaving.
California.
Isn't that the truth?
Yep.
You know what? Actually, let's linger there for a second.
Sure.
I literally have said, why are all these people, if your country sucks, fix it?
Yeah.
Why are you coming here?
That's
like,
right.
Are you going to just make our country suck? If your no, fix your country, stay there. But I have to confess, David, I just sold my house in Vermont because I said, I'm sick of y'all. You're crazy. And we left.
Heading to a red state.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we've got brain drain happening in California right now. So tell everybody, what district are you in? What district are you running for?
So I'm running in the 39th Congressional District against Mark Takano.
Okay.
And Mark Takano was made famous in Matt Walsh's documentary, What is a Woman? When he couldn't identify what a woman is.
Yep.
And again, when he testified against a parent's Bill of Rights on the floor. Again, when he said that Mike Tyson should be able to box against women if he identifies as a woman. And he's the ranking member in the Veteran Affairs Committee, despite having never served a day in uniform. So it's that complete abandonment of common sense, which has become so normalized in California.
So what made you decide? What had you say, you know what? I've done this stuff. I've worked in, film. I've done comedy. I'm a real estate person. And then you said, you know what? I need to put my hat in the ring.
Sure.
I need to run for office. What was the defining moment for you that had you decide?
There were a lot of defining moments. I think that it's been kind of a slow bleed in California for a long time. And a lot of us are just sort of sick of getting it on the chin.
Yeah.
And we're ready to send a few back. And, I took my kids on an RV trip to go see the state, and there were homeless people everywhere.
Yeah.
We've had this beautiful state that's constantly in a drought for the last 20 to 30 years because of water mismanagement, which I think is ridiculous. Over 70% of this planet is covered in water, and we just need to manage that. We need to desalinize water.
Exactly.
Run
You
it
got a whole
inland.
ocean, the whole west side of your
We're not
state
going to run out of it.
Water.
And if it's rising, we might as well run it inland, right? So there's some really basic things that we could do. Run freshwater inland, invest in nuclear energy, right? Stop shutting down nuclear facilities in California.
Yeah.
We're making this big transition towards, electric cars and whatnot, yet we can't power our own grid.
David, when Benjamin and I lived there in 2017, 2016, 17, 18-ish, we experienced a power outage for 4 days because it was hot. And I just think,
ridiculous.
If California can't keep the power on, why should anywhere else in the country be following their lead?
No, exactly. And ultimately, the failures of California end up coming to the rest of the country.
Right.
So this is ground zero in the fight. And what we need to do is we need to stop losing all these lords and ladies like yourself that are, there's not a lot of lords. We lost one lord and lady, and then we lost a bunch of people.
Yes.
But I've been meeting with people for the last 10 years. I'm a real estate agent, talking about leaving California, why they're leaving California. And we just need to hold on to enough people, start this common sense revolution, and then understand that we can flip it back in California, but it's going to take activating the youth like what we're doing here at Turning Point.
Yep, I love that. Okay, so now you've got a book. It's 2 parts. Common Sense for California, A Guide to the New Revolution.
It's a lot of words. That's why I had to write, put it out in 2 books.
So tell us what tell us what this book is. Tell us what this book is about. How'd you write it? What makes you passionate?
So I was spending time setting it up for about 6 months. And then on the day 1 of COVID-19, which was March of COVID-19, I actually started writing it. And I had no idea how close we were actually going to be to people talking about revolution becoming mainstream.
Yep.
I thought when I was writing this that we were not going to be talking about revolution, that we were not going to be talking about anything like this. And then as I'm writing this, COVID-19 happens, January 6th happens. I start watching the world falling apart around me, and I'm trying to make sense of it and trying to teach people, trying to figure out how to put it back together.
Yep. And so this is, one of
water, energy, It says the People's Guide to Clean Water, Energy, Education, Justice Reform, Job Creation, and Ending the Wars.
So this is actually is this your campaign pitch?
So,
basically in a book?
So when I wrote that book, I wasn't planning on running for office.
Yeah.
But after writing the book, I was like, you know what? I need to run. I'm a machine gunner. That's what I did in the Marine Corps. So we say accuracy by volume. It's the same approach to politics. And what I want to do is I want to put them on their heels. I want to put the establishment on their heels.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things that government should be doing right. Like, in your book right there, what government does right. And it's just everything's empty.
Yeah.
There's just nothing that they do right.
Yeah.
That's not okay anymore. We need to start holding them accountable for their failures. We need to start auditing government spending. And ultimately, if we do this right, people are going to be let out of their positions in cuffs.
I think that is so important. Follow the money. Right.
Amen.
This is what they say. A co-host of another show that we produce called Of the People, he always says, follow the money, because if you do that, then you find exactly where the corruption is coming from, what special interests are actually driving the policies, and how you end up with such nonsense.
That's right. And then you also find that they're using money, or they're using things like race and gender to divide us, to divide and conquer. Race is the cousin of economics. And so when we look
say more about that.
Yeah, race is the cousin of economics. When we don't look at things like, we say, oh, well, we don't need to look at CRT. We don't need to look at, okay, I understand that. But let's look at history.
Okay.
Real history. And let's look at the way that people are manipulated through money over time. Because if we don't learn about things like redlining, racial housing covenants, the manipulation of heirs' property rights, what happens is the things that they were doing to use against Black people,
they use it against everybody.
They use against everybody. And they're doing it. They did that with heirs' property rights throughout the country because of there not being a proper paper trail to pass on property. So what people do is they buy out the majority holding of a property and they force it to auction. And that's exactly what they did in Hawaii after the fires. They used heirs' property rights to manipulate people the same way that they were doing the slaves that ultimately ended up becoming free, owning their own land, and then ultimately having their land taken away from them or their families hundreds of years later.
Well, and this is why it's so important for people to learn and understand these things, because if we don't understand the way that the powerful people are manipulating us and taking advantage, then how do we protect ourselves? How do we protect our families? How do we build wealth? Right, which often comes from real estate and things like that.
That's right.
Right, that's building familial wealth starts often with land, property, buildings.
Yes.
And so it's actually like they're trying to keep us from that self-sustainability and from passing on generational wealth.
So Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet called Common Sense, which that was kind of my idea.
Okay.
Now, Common Sense is in common in California, so we had to write 900 pages. Common Sense was 46 pages, but he also wrote Agrarian Justice. And it talks about exactly what you're talking about, which is the importance of family farms for our freedom, right? And so when you look at something like the way that our housing is manipulated, our dollar is really being manipulated. So we think that, my housing value is going up. No. Your housing value isn't going up. Your dollar is losing value. Down. So it used to be that you could buy a house for about 3 times your annual salary. Now it's about 11 times your annual salary. So you have only about 16% of people can afford to buy a house.
Okay.
The average home buyer is 49 years old. Yep. 16% of people can afford to buy a house. So the American dream is for sale in California or in America. And we've sold it to Black Street, to Vanguard, to State Street. Yeah. And it's no longer for the youth.
Before we started rolling, you said something about 90%. That like the housing cost is 90% of your salary, or what was that?
So the cost of mortgage payments have gone up over 90% in the last 3 years since President Biden has taken office.
Oh my God. Oh, Bidenomics.
Yeah, Bidenomics.
Oh, everybody's great with Bidenomics.
Inflation is totally out of control.
Well, and one of the things I'm really mad about is they're trying to say inflation is only 3%, but the only way you get 3% inflation is if you keep out the cost of housing and all of the normal goods and services that people actually have to buy to live.
It's so manipulated. All of this data is manipulated, and we end up in a situation where we've got Governor Newsom talking on, every time he talks, you would think that Californians were thriving. You would think that he had solved homelessness. You would think that our water was, plentiful, because everything. Oh, Biden is putting on a master class in politics.
Giving him like a back rub. I'm like, why?
It is a tongue bath. I don't think it's a back rub. It is a tongue bath. And so Gavin Newsom is a failure as a governor. He was a failure as a mayor. His city of San Francisco is destroyed. The state of California is destroyed. The one thing that he did right as the governor was, empower U-Haul to help people leave California. He made them a whole bunch of money.
You know what? We were driving around Phoenix yesterday, and I saw a sign outside of U-Haul that said, "Moving to California, special on our trailers, only $99." And I was like, they're so desperate to bring trailers back to California.
Will pay for a house in California if you just use a U-Haul.
We'll pay you to take our U-Haul back to California for us. So let me ask you this. Your district, okay, you said it was which district again?
Riverside, Paris, Serpa Valley, Moreno Valley,
okay.
CA39.
Now, is that a traditionally red area or a traditionally blue area?
It was red, but now it's plus 24 Dem.
Really?
So it is a Democratic stronghold.
Okay.
But unfortunately for them, Mark Takano is the person that's holding down their Democratic stronghold. And he is an absolute clown show of a candidate.
Terrible.
And unfortunately, we haven't ran a really strong race against him in 12 years. And so he's been able to just kind of walk in.
Yeah.
And hold it down.
I think a lot of places like California, people think are a lost cause. But if you look at the precinct map of California, it is all red almost, except for the major cities, like around the major cities.
Except for the coast is completely red. And the difficult thing is, hey, don't give up on California. We got 1.7 million veterans here that are ready to get activated in the fight, that are ready to lead. And so if we could just turn that narrative from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, into post-traumatic growth, the idea that you are better men and women than that went through the trauma.
That's
the system, you know how it's designed, you're better equipped to fight it. So get activated in the fight. And in California, we can do it. We can turn the state red, but we need veteran leadership.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Seriously, do you know this is one of the things that Lord Benjamin and I talk about a lot when we wrote the book? The joke was
masterful book.
How could anyone who's ever been in the military trust the government?
No, we can't.
How?
So when I joined the military, I was a very Republican.
Yeah.
You just whatever they say, hey, we need to end these wars. The message from the troops is let us win. And then I saw it as a machine gunner on the ground and with Taliban on three sides. And I ended up in a situation where I had more in common with the people that I was shooting at, the men that I was shooting at, than I did with the cowards, derelicts, and hypocrites who sent me there to go shoot at them in the first place. And so we need to get to a point to where we could start looking at one another with social media and whatnot. We can start communicating with one another and start learning that our enemies are not abroad. Our enemies are right here. They're domestic.
Amen. Hallelujah. All right, David, share again with our viewers. If they want to support you, they want to check out your campaign, where do they go? What websites, socials? Tell them.
Sure. Check us out at davidserpaforcongress.com. My last name's spelled SERPA. And you could find my book there. You could find all of my social media handles. And we know that it's not all about money. We were able to make it so that just me and Takano in the race for $3,500. We didn't pay any of the political prostitutes that were dangling out their leg trying to get paid on my campaign. We decided to just go ahead and, leave the red light district of the Republican Party to the red light district. And we decided to actually engage in a populist movement and get people involved. So we met with the other candidates and they decided not to run or to run for other seats because at the end of the day, we need strong Republicans in California, but we don't need to run 6 of them for the same seat while the political prostitutes are getting paid and we continue to lose.
Absolutely. I love it. David, thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
We're going to be praying for you. We need your kind of leadership in Congress right now. And so we're going to be praying for you. Thank you for taking the time.
My lady, Lord.
All right. Bye, guys.